Okay, so welcome everyone. My name is Julie Shields Rutina, and I work at MEFA, and I am just thrilled to be here this morning with my fabulous colleagues, Niall Fuentes and Kate Sandell from DESE, and Bob Bardwell from MASCA. And I'm so happy that we're able to talk about this really important work regarding FAFSA completion. So, Bob, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Julie, and thank you for hosting us. Good morning, everyone. Bob Bardwell, proud executive director of the Massachusetts School Counselors Association. I'm happy to be a collaborator and partner in this work. And whenever Niall says the data's ready and we need to do a training, I say, yep, just tell me when. So happy to be here. Um, for those of you that are just learning about FAFSA completion, this has been a journey. We are so excited to have been part of that, meaning we as MASCA, because we knew other states were doing it and Massachusetts was not. And Niall will tell us how long we've had it, but it's probably been 4-ish, 5 years, maybe more. Okay, great. Anyway, it's been around for a while, but some of our colleagues still don't know about it. And that's a concern because this is useful information that will help you and more importantly, your students and your families. I always say, you do a lot of, typically counselors do a lot of work to get the student to look at schools, to apply to schools, to be accepted. And then we sort of say, oh, we're done. The rest is on somebody else. Well, if they don't have somebody else in their world, then it might be still us. And so by having that FAFSA completion data, we are able to then say to the family, or the student, by the way, it's not done yet. You got to do something more. And not that we're going to ever necessarily sit down with the family and fill out the numbers, but we at least can tell them if they're complete or not, which, as you know, if they don't complete the financial aid form, the research will show that they're less likely to attend college. So it's really important for us to help them get over that finish line. And so we're going to learn about it today if it's new to you or hear updates, but certainly want to thank everybody for being here. I'm going to turn it over to Niall, who's going to get us started.
Thank you, Bob. And Niall, I'm going to ask this question quickly before we get started because I did have one person say they couldn't hear. I'm assuming it might be an individual issue, but could other people maybe just put something in the Q&A saying that you can hear the sound fine? So I'll feel confident about that. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Okay.
Great.
And so the person who couldn't, I'd say try that volume button. Okay. Thanks.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Niall Fuentes. I'm from the Office of College, Career, and Technical Education. I am actually in this realm. If I look a little cloudy, I'm not a ghost. I'm just the weird lighting in state buildings. So again, I work in College, Career, Technical Education. I've been working on this for quite some time. I'm going to turn it over to my partner, Kate, to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Kate Sandel. I'm in the Office of Planning and Research at DESE, and I work with a lot of different data projects and a lot of the resources that are within Edwin, which we'll talk about our education warehouse.
Great. And before we really jump into this, I really want to, Kate and I have a presentation style. I talk too fast. Kate will jump in to slow me down. We've done probably 1,200 presentations together on different things. We also work on the early warning indicator system. Maybe some of you are friends of ours in the past. And I also want to say, and I don't think that Bob did a hard enough of a sale on this, how important it was for MASCA, and particularly Bob and Catherine Chu at that point, who helped to really kick off this connection between taking this higher ed data from U.S. Department of Education and helping us to really advocate to match it with the data that we have here on the state level. So it is imperfect. Nothing is a perfect data representation whenever you have multiple systems, but really that MASCA and the School Counseling Association in general really help to pull this together. So that being said, Bob often undersells himself. So today's agenda here, and again, I talk really fast. We're going to talk about a little bit about what FAFSA is, just to kind of level set. I think most of you know, most people in this room are probably school counselors and probably know a lot about this more than I do about what actually FAFSA is. Going to do a little bit of a state financial aid overview. I think there's a lot of great opportunities out there that a lot of families and kids don't know about, maybe even some educators, particularly for lower income kids that are available here. We're going to do a quickie on that. We're going to spend most of our time talking about these FAFSA Edwin reports, CR 307 and CR 607. And again, I'm going to say this 15 times as we do this, the department cannot give you access to Edwin. you need to go get it from your school district, and your level of access is determined by your school district and not by Kate and myself. It is ordinarily only available to school department employees of districts and charter schools, etc. Um, Although some people have partnerships that allow some college access agencies to look at it. There's a lot of student level data in here, and FERPA would not allow us to just let it go out into the wild. We are going to talk a little about this coming soon and sometime in January, where there will be a publicly facing dashboard about FAFSA that we're really excited about. Kate has done the lion's share about this work. There's a lot behind it, and we're going to talk about that quickly too, because as we're moving along, for the people who do not have access to Edwin, the general public is going to be able to look at this FAFSA completion information in almost real time. Maybe a couple weeks behind, actually, twice a month, not real time, but I will go over that. So that's the agenda for today. Feel free to throw questions into the Q&A. We can answer a lot of stuff on the fly. If it's really detailed, we might wait till the end. And again, Kate, jump in whenever you do. And Kate, can you give me a thumbs up if we move to the next slide?
Move to the next slide.
Beautiful. All right, so I'm not going to necessarily read this, but we know that for a long time, 2017 was kind of our apex of college engagement. We had almost 70% of all students immediately going to college. Across all demographics, we were seeing a lot of lift. And then there was kind of a crash, and it's gone down quite a bit. And only starting to come back in the last couple of years, and we'll talk about that. We're slowly increasing that enrollment in post-secondary education again. I think it's COVID had a lot to do this. It's weird to read coronavirus pandemic. I usually don't write like that. Again, I'm saying with this, we're starting to see this uptick. We just had our third consecutive fall term of growth in our public higher ed system. So this is good news. It's actually fall 2025, not fall 2024. I'll change that before I send these slides to you. And again, this is really driven a lot by the community college enrollment increases because of tuition-free community college for all students. We continue to have college-going gaps for historically marginalized populations, Black, Latino, English learners, students with disabilities, low-income kids in particular. Also, they're not historically marginalized population, but huge gaps in the gender between young men and young women attending college immediately. So these are all things we like to keep our eye on, and we have all sorts of other data tools that you can use to do that type of analysis. There is a state initiative, and it's mostly a logo now, and but really thinking about going higher to really encourage kids to look at all their post-secondary opportunities. We know that all kids aren't going to college, we get that, but higher education provides lots of opportunities for all of our students, and we want to really start thinking about closing these opportunity and achievement gaps. FAFSA, as you know, is a free application for federal student aid. If people are paying to do FAFSA, then they're being scammed. Of course, people do pay for support and for guidance and that type of thing, but most families who are eligible for FAFSA can do FAFSA fairly easily because I have a normal, not normal, sorry. I have an easy two-income family population. For my daughter who's now a freshman in college, it was really easy. It took me about 7 minutes to do FAFSA. I think that the changes in FAFSA have made it easier for a lot of families to get done. Still challenging. We know that cost continues to be a barrier for a lot of kids attending post-secondary education, particularly for first-generation college students. And again, FAFSA is one of the most important steps students and their families can take to college. I'm going to speak to MEFA in a second, but FAFSA for the majority of our kids, again, it's free. It doesn't make you have to go to college or have to get a loan or anything like that, but it just is there to provide more opportunity. So it's an important thing to look at. Talk a little about the access and affordability in the Commonwealth. This has changed a lot in the past 3 or 4 years. We have tuition and fee-free community college for all students who are, there's some rules around it. You have to have been here 3 years. So it kind of locks out some of our newcomer students. But there's, you need to complete a Massachusetts high school or adult education program, been here for 3 years. But other than that is tuition fee free for all student. I'll talk about that a little more in a second. There's Mass Grant Plus and Mass Grant Plus expansion. These are huge pieces, particularly for low income kids that are available. And of course, our tuition equity law. Which I'm finding that some people still really haven't heard about. And this is a great opportunity for students who might have access to FAFSA, usually students who are undocumented. This tuition-free community college started, it's been fully implemented as last year. The first year, There's kind of two funding streams. You don't really have to pay attention to this. There's Mass Reconnect that was really about students. That was how it first came in. These are kind of getting kids back, not kids, young adults, and not just young adults, adults back into college. And then Mass Educated opened up to all students. And this is income. It doesn't matter what your income is. For this, if you're a wealthy student or non-low income student, you still have access to tuition and fee-free community college. So this is important for all students to go. You do need to complete FAFSA, and you do need to oh, there it is right there. And it's what they call a last dollar grant program, which means they're going to take your Pell and all that type of, not loans. So you're not going to have to pay any loans, but they're going to take your grant money first before they pay off the rest of your community college. It's for full and part-time students, and it provides a book allowance. So there's some really good parts in here. And we see here some students from Cape Cod Community College, one of my 4 Mass Public alma maters. And you can kind of see that this is providing all sorts of opportunities for Cape kids and other kids to get the skills and knowledge and experiences needed to be successful in the 21st century economy. Mass Grant Plus is kind of a little bit of a different thing. This is for our, applies for mostly our 4-year colleges. We know that Pell eligible kids have free tuition and fees at all public institutions. So this means that you're basically left with just paying room and board, or unless you're commuting and then you don't have that. And this is especially a boon for low-income students. And it's available at all our state universities and UMass campuses. Again, you have to be admitted to those. Generally, our state universities, we're admitting probably 90+% of students for general admissions. Not so for every program. UMass tends to be a little bit more competitive, but great opportunities for low-income kids. And also, really, there's some. Again, this is the last grant piece. They determine the award. It supports all of them at 4 years, as I just said. And this is for students who are completing FAFSA or MASFA. Important to look at those financial aid deadlines. We know that a lot of our state colleges, our state universities get kind of squishy with this and will allow kids to apply late. Would really encourage, all of our kids, but particularly our low-income kids, to get their FAFSA in as soon as possible, and so we can start getting award letters to them, etc. And most of you know more about this from me. And Madison, I'm going to get to y'all in a second. A little bit more here it's also for other kids. For kids that are not low income but are kind of high low income, and it gets in the SAI level and that type of thing. But really look at this to see there's a lot of students who are kind of not low income but not low income, if you know what I mean, and they might have opportunity to get significant aid for going to a 4-year school. Again, important to get the FAFSA done, get it in there so they can start working on those award letters. For the question, I think it was Madison. I apologize. I read your name quickly. If I mispronounced your name, I'm wrong. A couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago, the Commonwealth passed a tuition equity law. And the intent of this was really to create a pathway for students to first get in-state tuition rates. A lot of our students who had lived here since they were 3 years old and were not citizens or legal residents, had green cards, had to pay out-of-state tuition rates and sometimes international rates. It was huge. It was impossible even for kids to go into community college. So the first part of this, it provides a pathway to in-state tuition rates. Again, these are students who have attended high school in Massachusetts for 3 years and earned a high school diploma or is equivalent, and adult students the same way. And I don't know, a lot of you work with adult students, but really checking that. We have a great contact at OSFA, which is our student financial aid support. Stephanie Barbosa, if anyone really get something tricky around these questions, she is super helpful about reaching out to individuals, school counselors, getting out to that. So feel free to email. The email we'll get at the end, and I will turn you on to Stephanie in that case. Part of this Tuition Equity Act also created basically a replication of the FAFSA. It is a little more challenging. There's an affidavit involved. It takes some work to do this, and I know a lot of you have done this, but there is a MASFA application. The MASFA only makes students available to state aid, but all the aid I just talked about, those students are available to. They're not going to be eligible for Pell, SEOG, or any of the other federal grant federal grant or loan programs, but they are eligible for state financial aid, which is substantial, particularly and made it affordable for all of our students who are graduating from Massachusetts public high schools and again have been here for a bit. So this is a great opportunity. We are hanging on to this as much as we can and kind of fighting against any legal threats that we've seen so far. But so far so good with this. And a huge, again, support of people from MASCA and other places to really get this done. A lot of our META and our immigration support agencies have really helped to get this law passed, and have a lot of our hardworking kids have access to financial aid and higher education. You can kind of see here, it needs to be a high school completer. It's a two-step process. It does involve an affidavit. Then you have to complete the math. So there are some hoops here. And some of these hoops are going to be hard for, be very honest, hard for some of our particularly low-income, undocumented English as a second language families to go through this. And of course, some trepidation about getting in to filing forms with the government. But I think we're being very protective of this. The Attorney General has been very protective of all of our students and getting access to this. But I encourage you to go to this webpage, and I'll send you all these slides afterwards and kind of get more information about how we can get access for all of our students to financial aid and college success. A little more about the MASFA here. I'm not an expert on this. It is available in English and Spanish, and there's an affidavit involved that kind of will talk about that the student is a high school completer, et cetera. But again, dig into this a little bit for those of you in communities, particularly that have large numbers of students who are not eligible for FAFSA. Might want to take a close look at this and even have sessions with some of your students who you know to be undocumented. All right. Any questions on the financial aid or MASFA stuff before I move on? Seeing none in the Q&A, but happy to pause for a second. Okay. The FAFSA window opened in late September. First time in 3 years that it opened up because they were doing the change to the new FAFSA. It actually opened up early. It was scheduled to open October 1st. I think we started getting the first data around September 26th or something like that. So this is great. We already have a lot of kids, about, I don't know, 33%, 34% of students, Massachusetts high school seniors have already completed FAFSA, which is great. I think when we hit January 1st, we really get into that kind of, sprint to March or so where most of our kids complete FAFSA, but that continues throughout the summer even, where, people are sitting in offices waiting for students to trickle in when mom finally says, you're not, you got to go to school. You're not going to just stay in your basement and do nothing. So FAFSA is open and we're ready to go and ready to roll. We're really trying to push this hard this year. Oops, really? Oh, I'm jumping right into the Edwin FAFSA tool. So now here's the complicated part. And, Kate, do you want to take over for a little while?
I'm curious what was going to be the complicated part.
Oh, no,
here's the complicated.
no, the FAFSA tool in general. We actually have to start thinking about this and engaging in this. So you want to talk a little about the Edwin FAFSA tool? Happy to do so, but
Sure. So we have two tools within Edwin to help track FAFSA, an aggregate tracker and a student level report. And these have been live for the last week or two. And what we do is every night the state gets FAFSA data from the U.S. Department of Education. And then we have the list of all students who are currently enrolled in Mass public schools in grades 12 and as past grade 12 receiving special education services. And we match that data, and then it's available to see. And the information, so we do that match every night. The FAFSA data is really new data, probably 5 times a week. But most days there's new data in there. A couple of times a week you could go in to check. Like today, the data looks pretty similar to yesterday, but tomorrow there might be more data in there. And the data comes in a couple days behind. And again, Niall mentioned before, access to Edwin is determined at the local level. There's sort of an Edwin administrator, and the process for getting access to that is also determined at the local level. But normally you reach out to that person. If you go onto on our public website, the DESE website /Edwin, you can find something that helps you figure out how to get access to Edwin. And I'll just give a plug to Edwin. There's lots of other valuable tools and information in there. So it's not just FAFSA. but here's a link that provides more information on using the tool, and we're going to walk through it and show a couple screenshots on the next tab. The next slide. So here's a little bit of information on logging into Edwin. On the top of every one of the web pages on the DESE website, there's something in the top right corner that says Security Portal. If you click on that, you get a login page, and you fill out that information, and then it's multi-factor authentication. So they're going to send you a code to the email address tied to your login, and then you enter that code, and you will be able to go into the homepage. And here's another little link here to just a handy sort of couple page guide that walks you through some tips on navigating Edwin and running reports. So strongly recommend that.
Move.
Oh, do we have some Q&As? I'm sorry.
I'm doing the Q&A.
Oh, you're doing the Q&A.
Yep.
So the reports within Edwin are grouped together by different content areas. The FAFSA reports are one of our high school and beyond reports. It's part of and within that high school and beyond, there are subfolders. There's post-secondary readiness and post-secondary success. These are some of our post-secondary readiness reports, right? Like they're reports for students who are in high school, but the goal of them is looking at post-secondary readiness. I'll just give a plug. We have post-secondary success reports that helps track recent graduates to figure out how they're doing in post-secondary settings. But here are the two reports. The CR 307 is that aggregate report, that summary report, and CR 607 is a student level report. And so that lets you, it's going to be a roster of all the currently enrolled students and understand their current FAFSA status. So again, we got the summary and the student level. It's updated several times a week, and it's a few days lag time. Like right now, if you run the report, the most recent data is 12/13, so it's only from 3 days ago, but there's only a couple from that day. There's a few more from 12/12. So it runs on less than a week lag time, generally. And as I said before, it comes in, normally there's new data on Monday and new data on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. And when you're choosing award year, at the top of the report, there's going to be a series of filters. And award year for the current 12th graders is the next academic year. So it's the 26-27 award year. And there's a couple of different options. So we have all that FAFSA data we get from the state, from the federal government, goes to Department of Higher Ed, and we match it with our currently enrolled students. And what we're able to do is say sort of, do we find that student in that FAFSA data having filled out information? We are able to mark those as submitted. And then from submitted, we say, is it complete? Are we able to get an SAI for that student who's filled it out? Then we determine it complete. Or is it incomplete? We don't have an SII. They've done the FAFSA, they've started the FAFSA, they've submitted it, but it's not done yet. And the other option is not found. And we're going to dig into that not found, because not found is our best attempt to say we don't find the student in the FAFSA data, but it is slightly imperfect, right? We're not saying they haven't completed it. We're just saying we haven't found them in the data. Niall, do you want to add to that, or?
Yeah, actually, Kate, I'm just going to jump to a couple questions because I don't realize sorry, I'm clicking through these too fast. There was a question from my friend Albert around the MASFA data. We will not be providing MASFA data in any Edwin report, as far as I can imagine, mostly because of, it is very, what's the word I'm looking for? Secure information. Yeah. For the safety of our families, and we just don't want that type of data really getting out to the public. I mean, there might be people, even school districts, who have, views about things and, have access and share that information. And we want to make sure we're protecting our students and families. So we really trust in our schools and districts administrators and counselors to communicate with students and families around this. Sorry, I mean, I can understand the want for that, particularly in districts with lots of undocumented students, but it's doubtful that we will ever share that unless someone else makes that decision. And also there was a question about that Julie answered. Again, I don't know if everyone can see the Q&A, so I'm just going to answer it anyway. About going to college, and do students who did not decided to go to college need to fill out FAFSA before graduating? Question is no, it's not in the current graduation requirements. There's a few graduation requirements. I always think it's a good idea because it doesn't cost anything and it doesn't do the student any harm. Obviously, I think most of you run into situations where, like, particularly there are families that don't want to do more paperwork, or it's none of my business. Or I don't want my kid to get a loan and have. So I just wanted to make sure. I think it's a good practice to at least say. I think our Gear Up friends in the College Access Program, some of our districts, do the counseling and have students opt out of doing FAFSA or MASFA if they haven't done it, just to say that you've given this kid a lot of advice around their opportunity here. And also just to see if you followed the kind of grad requirements working group work. FAFSA completion is one of the recommendations. So we're way far from that becoming into fruition, but it also is probably good practice to have something, because you don't have to like rush and get something done around FAFSA completion in your kids in case that does become part of the state level graduation requirements. And I think that covers the questions for now.
This is just a helpful reminder within Edwin. We're going to show you a page. There, as I mentioned, there are some prompts at the top. So let's say you're running that student level report, the CR 607 FAFSA student level report. You're going to go in and you might have to make some sort of adjustment. And if you do, just be sure to hit that view report button. It's going to turn green when you make a change. And that's so that it actually takes into account the changes that you've made on the thing. Sometimes it seems like it's taken, sometimes the screen will flash and you'll think, oh, it's now taken into account that I only want to run it for 12th graders and not 12th graders and SP or something like that. It's just sort of an important thing. If you're not in Edwin a lot, I always like to do that reminder. So if you see that, if the view button is green, you need to press it so that the report takes into account the changes you've made to the filters.
Great. So I'll start and then Kate jump in.
Okay.
So this is one of the reports. And again, to get here, you have to be in the security portal. So you have to have security portal access, and even within that, given permissions to see particular things. This is the school and district view report. We used Worcester because it's a big school with districts with lots of students, and we know that they're very active in using some of these tools. And you can kind of see here what Worcester looks like. There's a state comparison here, and then you go down to the kind of this school. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. I was scrolling down like it was in wait,
you had two tabs of this. This is the state that has
all right, all right, never mind, I'm dumb. Let me start over. This is the state level one. Let's back up 15 seconds. I pretend I didn't say any of that. This is the state level one. So this gives you an indication of what's happening on the state level. You can see here, I think we ran this 3 days ago. It's the number of students here, again, 12th grade, and what are called SP students. So these are your students that are enrolled in your school, but not enrolled in a particular grade. Ordinarily, these are students who might be in your school or in out of district placement. The SP kids, they're not all your special education kids. It's just the kids that kind of, most of them are staying till they're 22. And we'll talk about this in a second because you can actually select grade, but we're going to save that for a couple slides. But it gives you an idea of the total number of students, how many submitted, how many are complete, incomplete, not found. Submitted are those who have kind of hit submit on that, sent it on. Complete means they're done, they're ready. Stuff is going to be sent to the feds. I'm not to the feds, to the schools that they applied for. Incomplete usually means there's something left. You still need to talk to these kids. Like, yeah, you submitted, but you might have forgot a social security number, a signature, or something like that. I think this incomplete is happening less and less now that everything is electronic, but there's still going to be a number of kids. Not found is a little bit different. Again, as Kate said, we match data from between SIMS. We'll talk more about this in a second, and U.S. Department of Education data. So it is imperfect. There are a lot of things that happen with, particularly with Hispanic naming conventions, the E. So if you're Perez y Soto or something like that, where they'll just put Perez on one of the, on either what they filed with the feds or what here, or people who came from places and changed their name from a name that might be complicated for English speakers to something like Mary or Lisa or something, and you're not getting that match, or the date of birth is switched off. There's nothing we can really do to facilitate those matches, but we're going to talk about an unmatched file in a second. On here, you're going to see a list of schools. Anytime you see that blue link, it's magic. You can click on and drill down into that information. I'll show you a little bit more as we get into God damn it, the school level one here. Again, district level one, this is Worcester. You can click on each of these high schools. You can get, this is a good view for like your superintendent or school committee or something like that. If you're doing a report, this is what we're going to look at. And again, if you click that blue link, you're going to go to a student level report about that particular school. Kate, you want to take this over while I get my voice back?
Yeah, hold on one second. Carlos asked about how to get access to Edwin, and I just put a link to a getting access guide that walks through how to find your local Edwin administrator, and that's who you sort of reach out to and ask for access. And again, for access comes at two levels. There's sort of an aggregate role, or you can get access to student level data within your school or district. In order to see the CR 600 student level FAFSA report, you would need that student level role. It's called school or district administrator. It gives access to student level data. It does not give access to individual educator data or educator evaluation data. That has additional security rules to get that level of access. So if your local Edwin administrator sort of balks at that, you can loop us in and we can clear up that confusion.
Can I just jump in? Excuse me, Kate, because I forgot to say this earlier. And I say this when I do trainings. Thank you for making that clarification. It can be done. It should be done, but it often isn't done because people at the central office typically get worried about data and sharing it with people. Um, it's no different than sharing the free and reduced lunch list with us. Like we could really do a lot with that list, but people don't want to share it because they're worried about concerns. Just be aware that MASCA and DESE have said counselors should have this level of data. Makes sense if you want to help them. You can explain what this webinar is all about and why it's so important. But there's tons of other things they can do besides this, which you won't get into, but there's other benefits to you as a school counselor. And I would just say, we are trusted with students' lives, not to hurt themselves or someone else, but yet we're not trusted with data to help them get to college or whatever. So I scratch my head sometimes when I hear feedback from counselors that the school central office people won't let you have data access. And I just say, well, how are we going to help kids if you don't give it to us? And that really important about that educator part. Yes, there was a concern at one point that we would go in and see all the teacher ratings. That's not the case. No, no, no. It's separated. So just keep banging that door down if you have to and use your resources here to help you if you want access but you're being denied.
Yes. Thank you, Bob. And so this is a report, and this screenshot is more or less, I think we've exported this report into Excel and done a screenshot so that we've removed the district names, the district school and student names, and that SACID, because that's a personal identifier, and we've also removed the date of birth here. But you sort of have all the information. The demographic information, if you ran the report right now today, this demographic information for current 12th graders would be blank, but it should come in probably next week. It's once our SIMS data is loaded, that will populate. And so then you have some information, some demographic information, and then the order of this is started, the FAFSA completion date, and then the submitted a FAFSA, yes or no, and then that status, complete or not found. And so you see completion dates are tied if the status is complete. Incompletes are marked as submitted but don't have a completion date, and then those not founds are there. And again, some of these students, we're going to ding a little bit, some of the students, they might have been in, but their name didn't match because in our student system, the name is hyphenated, and in the FAFSA they've split it up as middle and last name. So it can be a little messy, but you have this report, and then you can export it into Excel or CSV for continued monitoring, or to merge it with other data sources.
Yeah, so the beauty of this report, it's not only, I mean, I think a lot of people will do that traditional highlighter and marker thing, like what a lot of good counselors do. And they just say, I got this kid, I got this kid, I got this kid, I got this kid, highlight some kids. But to Kate's point, if you put it in Excel and you see that you have a lot of Latino ELs in this list, you're going to realize like maybe I can get this group of kids together or their families together with someone, so some Spanish speaking resources, etc., to really focus on that group. And it really allows you to kind of do some disaggregations by these student groups so you can really make sure you're serving the students who are kind of on the lower end of the opportunity achievement gap here. And again, with income and low income students as well. We know by looking at some of our FAFSA data that there's between non-low income and low income students, there's about a 25% percentage point difference in FAFSA completion between low income and non-low income, with non-low income kids completing at a much higher rate, when in fact low income students have the most to gain by filling FAFSA and going on to college, because they will have access to more grant funds. So really important, I think, to look at these. We really want to focus on equity. That's part of why we have these student groups here. And we're going to publish it in what we know in our public facing document as well when we get to that point. Kate, did we do this already? Oh no, this is you.
This is just the showing. Oh, so some additional information about this. I think I feel like I've already walked through the different column things. The only thing to call out here is there is this blue hyperlink underneath that SACID, or it's the blue, the SACID appears in blue. That hyperlinks to then another report that really digs into the academic history of that student. And I mean, I think FAFSA is great, but school counselors should have access to the PR 600 student profile report. It's made for them. So that's sort of a big thing for you to be able to go in and get more information about that individual student. And then, yes, the demographic information will fill in once October SIMS is loaded, which we hope to do this week. So it should be live next week. And then I think the non-matched, which is the one I want to talk about, I think that's next.
Oh, no, we put them in different orders.
Files. This is important.
Okay.
So downloading your files. So in the top corner, there's a handy dandy button that says export. I recommend this I recommend downloading to Excel, because then you're going to have a tab that has all your match. So it's all your kids enrolled. You're going to have whether or not they completed or not. Matched is whether is sort of the how we're pulling the data tied to FAFSA. So you're going to have a tab of all your currently enrolled kids and say whether or not they're submitted, complete, or found or not found, and that'll be on there. And then I think the next thing is actually the grade filter.
Yep.
And so next.
Oh shoot.
Oh yep. No, this is good. This is okay. The next, there's the grade filter. So again, we have it for grade 12 and SP. You can run it by default, it will show all those students. If you just want to run your grade 12 kids, you can select that. Or if you just want to run your SP kids, you can select that. But the unmatched kids, and this is the hard one that we want to make sure people understand. So there are kids that they fill out the FAFSA and they said they went to Malden High School, or they said they went to Abbey Kelly, but they're not currently enrolled in Abbey Kelly. Like, we can't match them to any student enrolled in Abbey Kelly. And some of that could be naming conventions or differences in date of birth. That's another one. Sometimes it's, the month, year versus year, month. It might be reported wrong in probably our student information system. Or it could be a student who actually graduated a year ago and didn't go to school. And, so they're only 19 years old and they're applying to college for the first time. And we can't really separate them from one of your currently enrolled 19-year-olds and, someone who graduated a long time ago. So there might be some former students or some students who have transferred, but they're still sort of tied. So that non-matched list is going to have a couple of those. So if you have a student that you're sitting down with and they say, I filled it out, and on this report we're saying not found, take a look at non-matched. But then the big thing is we cannot do a one by one rematch of that just because there's so many students in the state. So unfortunately, we can't sort of fix that. If it was a naming convention and you wanted to fix the naming convention within your student information system to match what's in FAFSA, that we would then be able to match it. But I think that's
yeah. So I think I'm looking at a couple of questions from the chat. If the columns are blank, Jacqueline, I hope I pronounced your name wrong. I'm having problems with my mouth today. If they're blank, all the ones that are demographic related are blank right now because we do not have SIMS for October certified yet.
Scroll over on your screen and you will see the FAFSA completion information further over to the right.
True. So I don't know which ones you're speaking of, but I think that's one.
That is probably because I had the same response when I opened first this year. I was like, there's no data. Like,
yeah, no, I did the same thing, and I've used this tool more than anybody, and I still suffer.
If you're able to run the report, you have access to. Yes, the demographic is blank.
And yeah.
And so back the matching the non-match, if they're non-matched because of the name, like let's say in your student information, you have a kid listed as Tom, and in the FAFSA, it says Thomas. If you updated the student information system, like what your school sends to us and says, no, it's not Tom anymore, it's Thomas, we could then match that kid. But if it's something more, unless it's the school changing how you refer to the kid to match the non-matched, we can't do it. Like you can't call us and be like, hey, can you say that Tom is really Thomas? We can't do sort of ad hoc fixes, if that makes sense.
And also just important, I don't know if we talked about this, these matches are what are called claimed students. These are students that your high school has said are in your school, have told us, and that's where you're seeing the matches. So a lot of times in the unmatched file, you'll see students there who's like, oh, we used to have that kid, but they're not here anymore. So there's a lot of noise that you will find in the unmatched file, as well as finding some of your real kids that are in front of you that we couldn't match. So there's a lot of noise in there to look at. And for Carver, I just looked and I see kids. So Chrissy, if you want to email us afterwards, we can follow up on that. All right, who's next here? Again, this has to, again, a little bit more about, I use the name Alex because, miss, I did it. And so this is a little bit about the unmatched in case you're trying to explain it to someone else in your school or district. There's really not a way for us to fix this. We can't go in and fix things on our end and call a kid a different name after the school said they had a specific name or date of birth. If it gets changed in your student information system, Aspen, whatever you use, that match will probably happen, but sometimes people think it's worth it, sometimes not.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I definitely feel like at some point, and I know we're tracking, you're tracking progress, and it takes a lot of work, so you should get credit for all the work you do. But at some point, like, give yourself that credit. I'm sorry we're not able to sort of to market, but like, check it off. You've done that kid. It's probably your effort is better spent on other kids instead of ensuring sort of our bookkeeping. But yeah, let's move on to I think the next, let's talk about the public FAFSA tool, which is slightly different.
Is there any questions about, and again, we're going to give you our email because a lot of you are going to have individual questions about this. I'm glad people are digging in, but would love to just go into kind of what we're going to talk about in our public. This is going to be sometime in January, be public facing. This is an initiative. Well, I guess I wrote it on the slides. I shouldn't talk about it. I'll talk a little about the dashboard. When the actual dashboard, Kate, I'll hand over you to talk about because it is really the work that she's been doing. Kate has been working hard with our IT teams to kind of get this publicly facing dashboard together. It really is to provide public updates around FAFSA completion. Everyone will be able to see this. You might see it on your local newspaper, these data. You might see, your mom can look at it, your school committee, etc. So it really is developed some transparency on FAFSA completion, which I know is going to create some issues in some districts, but we really want to get as much information out there to everyone. And this will allow our college access partners and colleges also to dig in and hopefully focus on school districts that have lower FAFSA completion to really get in there and increase FAFSA completion and limit those gaps. There's a couple, just to give you a state view, there was an ACARE recommendation about this, which was a group that a governor's initiative came together after the Supreme Court affirmative action decision to really still focus on our historically marginalized students and making sure they're going to college, as well as FAFSA, a FAFSA resolution, both boards, the Board of Higher Education and BESI, our bosses, to really set some completion goals. And we're going to hear more about this as we go on. And also really use to target our communications and our limited resources where they need it most. If, Kate and I need to go and present about the FAFSA tool in places that have low FAFSA completion or regions, even better, I'm happy to do that. If we want to go to places that are, struggling with FAFSA completion. How's it different than Edwin reports? Again, this letter salad I probably spelled out. It's Department of Higher Ed, us, and our Executive Office of Education working together to put this out. There's a whole release strategy. So you're getting kind of a preview of this whole release strategy in January with press releases we had to write and stuff like that. So there'll be more information about this. We're using the same data source here that we used for the stuff that's in Edwin. We're using match data, so the numbers are going to be a little bit lower than actual completion, but we're going to do the best we can. But in this tool, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to report it twice a month, so probably the 1st and the 15th of every month it will be reported starting in January, but the information will go back until October. Again, publicly available. We'll suppress small numbers of students. Slightly different in that we are using as our denominator, and stick with me for a second on this fraction talk, is going to be focused on kids who are high school seniors in October of the senior year. So traditionally what you're seeing in enrollment rates that we use for Chapter 70, what you're seeing kind of on our profiles, reports, etc., that's what we're going to be using. So the denominator is going to be slightly different than what's in Edwin. Edwin is going to stay the same because we have a strong belief that every student in front of you is important. But as far as looking at data and setting goals, we wanted some stability in that student group. So it's going to capture the vast majority of your students in this tool, but not all of them. And I think the number is going to be slightly higher here because we're not going to include the SP students, the students who are staying till at 22, who complete FAFSA at like a 0.5% rate. So the numbers will be slightly higher than you see in Edwin, but that's okay. They're tools for two different uses. And that's kind of really important to remember. Kate, you want to take this over because this is your baby?
Yeah, so the data, it has a state view, and then we also get to dig into school and district level information, and then we're going to be looking at it as all students and then by various student groups. And this is maybe a little different even than the student. Well, it's not different necessarily than everyone, but it's, we're going to have low income, non-low income, special education, non-special education. So really highlighting a lot of the different subgroups. The dashboard has a state overview tab, a school and district overview tab, and then we're also going to have something that is high flyers, and it's going to showcase I think it's 25 districts with the highest overall completion rates. And then big movers to highlight districts that have seen large percentage point increase in completion rates over, by default, the last 2-week period, but you'll have the option to sort of change the time period that you want to look at. Again, it also will allow for year-to-date progress, easy year-to-date progress. You'll get to see the chart that we'll show where you can sort of see your uptick from 20 to 30 to 40 to 50% completion rate. And in future years, we'll be able to allow for like point in time comparison to prior years. Like, how does this March compare to last March? But we sort of have to save the data throughout the FAFSA cycle to enable that feature for future. And I know I saw we had hoped this would be live this week, actually, is when we hoped it would be live. But unfortunately, there have been some data delays, so it will be launched in early to mid-January.
And the question about access, it will probably be on the DESI CCTE site, but I think that's to be determined whether it's actually posted.
Yeah.
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 So,
Well,
okay.
oh, Niall, you're in charge of that. So yeah.
Oh yeah. So yeah, it will be. I just didn't know if you want to put on data. Anyway, we'll figure that out.
Yeah. Okay.
We're going to show you, we're going to spend like 4 more minutes looking at a couple screenshots, and I want to stop with 5 minutes left for
Yes.
some questions.
So the next screen, this is the state. We'll have a headline at the top that says the overall completion rate. And then you get to see it by all the different student groups and a little spark bar chart there. And then we have the year to date. And so what this is showing this is showing last award cycle, because that's the data that we have been testing and building it with. So of course, when this goes live in January, there'll only be a handful of increments in this chart, and it will build throughout the cycle. So, but we'll get to mark that.
Yeah, and for those of you with really close eyes on this, there is some flop between submitted and completed, but so the numbers will be right when it comes out, but we're still messing with some stuff. So there will never be more completed than submitted FAFSAs, but bear with
Yeah,
us as we work through these data
these are
issues.
not final. These are screenshots from some of our building efforts.
I just know someone would notice. Okay.
Yes, of course someone would notice. And then just to point out, and I'll point out on this thing because we've gotten this feedback on some of our dashboards. Across the top, you notice there are buttons for the different tabs. We have a home tab that just introduces you to sort of the FAFSA and the thing. But then there is a navigation tab that just has a couple of like things to keep in mind as you're navigating. It talks about the identifying the drop down menus and sort of where to look for those and what those are. And also there's like hover features and some other filtering options where like if you click on certain things, it will filter somewhere else. So that navigation tab is just a really high level thing that helps users navigate it. So just as you're doing it, clicking across the buttons can sometimes help so that you take a pause on the navigation to ensure you know how to use the dashboard. Here we have school and district overview. This is one where we're figuring out, we're either going to embed the district year-to-date chart on this one, or it will be a separate district trend tab. Well, we're figuring that out. But this mirrors the state one, but it just lets you look at your district, and then if you're the individual high schools in your district and compare those completion rates, and then the student groups. You get to see it by all the student groups, and just notice you will have to scroll to see some of the information in this dashboard. There are little scroll bars next to the tables that don't fully fit. So there are additional student groups. And then I think we just have a screenshot of the high
Yeah. I do
flyers.
want to point something out just really quickly here, and this is just something you can look at and see really quickly. Malden has obviously been doing some work around looking at low income FAFSA completion. I mean, you'll see here their rate is 52.5, and the rate is 46.9 for the gap is much smaller than you see on the level of the Commonwealth. Still, I'm sure they would say we have a long way to go. But you can kind of tell how their work last year around getting low income kids to FAFSA is paying some dividends initially.
And then high flyer again, this is just a tab just to highlight some of the districts that have the highest overall completion rate. And then you can run it for all students or for the individual student groups. And then we'll update after you hit the selection. And then the date as of is, I think, it's typically you would run it for the most recent, but if you want to say, well, who had the most as of, last month, you could backdate it.
So, and just so you know, in mid-January or whenever this actually comes to fruition, we have some communication plans that includes MEFA and MASCA. They might not even know that yet. And if we want to do another session for, I think getting your principals in here would be helpful. Even some district staff to kind of look at this and say, hey, the whole world can see this now. Let's really pay attention to this. It would be important. Our last slide, and we can stop and wow, we went almost right at time, Kate. Here's a cat saying thank you. This email address is easy to remember, and also Kate and I will both look at it in case one of us is out. Really encourage you to use that for kind of all these data type questions for us. I'm going to send these slides to you to Julie to send you shortly. A little bit here about the FAFSA tool itself. The Go Higher campaign is also here. There's a good cheat sheet in there on kind of Mass Grant and the free community college stuff and some links there. It's just a good place to start. It's a nascent site. There's not a ton of info there, but there's a logo. And then, of course, our friends at the Office of Student Financial Assistance are great. Again, around particularly on MASFA, Stephanie Barbosa is freaking awesome and will kind of answer individual counselors' questions about specific students and really digs in and really cares about this and does good work. And I wish Stephanie was here to hear that. If anyone talks to her, you can let her know I said that. And that's our presentation for today. Happy to take any questions from anybody. If not, we will go on with our week. Julie?
Thank you so much. This was just fantastic. I know I can say that. I know everyone who has been listening in feels the same way. I don't see any further questions. You were also awesome at answering everything as they came up. Yes, I will be sending out the recording and the presentation slides tomorrow, so you'll have them and share them widely with your colleagues who maybe, had something else come up today. And with that, we can wait 30 seconds or so, but I don't see any open questions.
Okay.
Did the person from Carver find them? I am seeing you
I
in
see it
CR
too.
307. Okay.
Oh, let's see. I think so. We have an answer. Yes.
Okay. Because I was like, I did check and I do see. So
And Bob, I'll give you the last word if you have anything
Yeah,
to
Bob.
say.
Just keep up the good fight. I say this a lot these days. There's a lot on our plates, more so than ever before. It's a tough time to be an educator. It's a tough time to be in a role supporting all students when there's so many things happening in our world. And so I just want to say thank you for continuing to do this work. Our students and families need you now more than ever. And this is just one little piece of what we do, but an important piece. And so just please keep up the good fight because our kids need us. So
Yeah, great.
Thank you, Bob.
you're welcome.
Thank you, Niall. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, everyone.
Oh,
And
there's another question there about high demand scholarship from the state.
I would go to the OSFA page that is linked in here. It has information about all. Do I have the OSFA? It's in the presentation. They talk. There's things in there about the Herder Scholarship, the high demand scholarships, and all the different stuff. That's really run by Department of Higher Education, and that might be more helpful to you.
thank you. And lots of people are thanking all of you. So,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah, so thank you all for being, in this season of lights, being, a candle in that light. It really, you don't get thanked enough for the work, and we do appreciate it.
Have a good day, everyone.
Bye, all.
Bye.
Now, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
When Julie stops recording,
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
not
let
that
her
I,
do that.
I
Bye. Whoa,
Oh.
record again.